Now, dear colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, we have over half an hour for questions and answers. So please, as we did in the first part, introduce yourself and ask your questions to one or both of the panelists. Yes, yes, Professor.
Okay, this is a question for James. Lecture capture, a very interesting subject that I've debated many times with colleagues across different universities. One of my kind of bugbears with the concept of lecture capture is that if I can replace a lecture with a recording of it, what's the value of that experience in situ?
That's a really good point. I think that is a really good question, and I think it's a case of understanding what the academic is trying to do in that session, and whether or not it's purely didactic or providing information to the students. I think the lecturing part of a lecture, shall we say, might not necessarily be the whole 50 minutes. And so I think there's the reasons that are there. That, I mean, within King's, we have the option for the academic to pause and start the recording if they want to then engage in that debate and discussion. I think if we think that all lectures are like that, then we're probably trying to kid ourselves. And I think there needs to be a look at how we do deliver lectures. Hence that I mentioned around us looking at about not reimagining the lecture so students see the value in it. And I think that's a key bit, is that lecture isn't just the recording, it's also or that part of information, it's also the surrounding debate, the challenges, the questions, the feedback and what have you. That said, though, from our lecture capture evaluation report, the feedback from some students was they expected to be lectured at, which was another take on what people perceived education is. So I understand what you're saying, and we could just record the lectures and not bother having any physical spaces or chairs. But then again, that goes back to the culture shift in what students are expecting when they go to university. So hopefully we can not necessarily change lectures in some respects, because the whole purpose of them is around, or where they originated from was the efficiency again around. It's a bit similar to high stakes final assessments. It's the easiest way to share knowledge with a wide audience, but also looking at the value of that and breaking it up. So maybe you've obviously, I'm assuming, you would have heard about flipped classrooms, so where the learning is in video format before the session, and when they come to the session, there's much more discursive and learning from peers, and that might be a reasonable method to do going forward. But we wouldn't recommend that we just provide lecture captures and that's it, because I think there's a technique to delivering online education that isn't just a video for 55 minutes. It's much more nuanced than that in regards to chunking that up, understanding interactions and engaging and understanding the content. Hopefully that answers. Yeah, great.
Thank you. Anybody else?
I have a question. How do we create that safe space for professors that allows them to push those envelopes? I can't answer that. I've got to ask the professors. How do we actually create that safe space?
Okay. Well, I'm happy to add my thoughts, and then maybe somebody else can pick up on that too. I think the way in which you provide a safe space is actually providing capacity to the academic teams, is understanding who is best at doing what. When we create a partnership with a university, there is always clarity that the subject matter expertise resides with the academic team. And what we bring into there is the online learning pedagogy expertise. So we add capacity to those teams so that they feel comfortable that what they're really good at is what they're going to carry on doing. And through the engagement with us, they develop their skills and they become more comfortable in doing these things online. So the issue of bringing capacity onto existing academic teams, I think, is the key to answering that question.
Thank you. Dejan, please.
I have 2 questions for James.
Okay, sure.
From what I understand, you've done a lot of research on what are the expectations of students, how do they see the future learning. So first question is, are there any findings that you could share with us that would surprise us, that's something that's changing now? And related to that also, from what you were saying, if I didn't misread some of it, a lot of the time your attempts to assess their needs and expectations turn into treating them as customers, which is different from the traditional relationship between a student and a university. Did you notice any negative effects of that approach? So 2 questions for now.
I'll take the customer one first, if that's okay. I think that's a very sensitive word to use in academia around treating students as customers. I think we see them as sort of, especially with our strategy around co-creating.
I said maybe I misunderstood.
No, that's fine. No, not at all. It can be seen because I sort of frame it around growing student expectations, around obviously expectations from the money that is spent in education and what they then perceive they get for that money. So I would never say students are customers, merely co-creators or feeding into what experiences they want going forward. And talking about findings, I think we just need to think around students as individuals and understand what they want. What they want from education. It's also discipline specific. A student that's coming to study law might have a different understanding of what they want from that degree, as opposed to a student that may be doing English literature, for example. But there's all things there about growing as individuals, understanding how to work together and also work and engage and question each other to then evolve the experience. There's people that will prefer to have a traditional type of teaching, which they expect to be in a place and a time and be lectured at, as I mentioned. But then there's also students that want flexibility, want to be able to look at a lecture capture recording, want to be able to choose not to attend, depending on different weeks, might want to go to the university, might not want to go to the university. So what we're finding is there's a much more variety of expectations from the students, and it's trying to cater for those.
Any general patterns in terms of form and format that emerge?
Not at the moment. No.
Yeah, my name is Dijan from University of East London. My question is directed to James. Just want to know, introducing this e-learning and like digital platforms in universities, how does the like professors and lecturers see it? Are they say willing contributors to it, because like taking into consideration their jobs as well might be on the line, because like the universities might say, oh, instead of needing 5 lecturers, they might need only 2. So are they willing to contribute or subscribe to that? Thank you.
I think it goes back to a bit before about capacity building. At the moment, across King's, the biggest issue is about having time to engage in these different activities. And I think what the whole purpose of this isn't around reducing the headcount of academics. It's about enriching the education experience at King's. So I wouldn't see seeing digital education as some sort of in conflict with the number of academics we have at King's. It's purely there as an enhancement to the experience. Having academics engage with using the different tools, we're very conscious again around the time that they have available and trying to make things as simple as possible and as valuable as possible. Yeah, probably simple is not the right word, as valuable as possible, because some things do take effort, but hopefully are more valuable to them and the students going forward. So they do get, for example, I believe with our King's Online aspect, they do have time to help to create content that goes totally online. But there is ways and issues with about freeing up time so they can really look at the curriculum and look at options of how the technology can support what they want to do. Because I'm sure academics don't necessarily want to stand at the front and repeat the same lecture year after year after year and not have an encouraging debate with their students in the classrooms. And they'll much more be enriched themselves as well to have challenges and what have you. So if I think I get your question, I don't see technology being anything other than something that hopefully academics will want to use to improve the student experience and their own experience at King's. So, but you're right, and it's on one of my slides, it's about that cultural thing. There's a cultural shift. I think the way we've educated hasn't really changed massively over 200 years. In the last 10, 15, 20 years, obviously, the e-learning has evolved, but I think we're still at that stage where, especially for on-campus, is we're bolting technology on to do that enhancement, so like the lecture capture, rather than looking at potentially flipping the classroom and not having to record a lecture because the content's already provided a different way to the students, and there'll be no value in recording the lecture because it's debates and what have you. The other piece that we're also looking at, which I didn't mention, was looking at about how we also bring the outside into the classroom. So rather than having the four walls and that's it, synchronous session, it's also understanding how students might attend that session from afar. So then try, again, it may be just enhancing current practice, but again, we want to learn from that to see how, if that is a viable option and can be used as an efficient and effective delivery method going forward.
Thank you, James. Yes, please, madam.
Hi, my name is Rashida Adam, UEL alumni. My question's to Alan Dean, Burning to Learn. In your experience of working with young learners that have actually left education prematurely, what have you found that most of the students wanted to actually learn when they came to you? What was it that they were interested in learning about, and what was it that they were not engaging with in school, for example? What were they requesting that they wanted to learn?
It varied. We used different projects, project-based learning, but it was listening to them, not prejudging them, and suddenly the barriers went down. So whether they felt that their literacy skills were poor, they would open it. Their science skills, we would bring in specialists in different areas that would just open them up. And it was actually finding out who they are, just opened it. And I think technology is there because you see some young people work in fields with computers that you think, how are they doing that? They don't, but they do. They haven't got a fear of hitting that button. Old people like me think, will it delete? Will I never find it again? Where they jump in. So it started off, as I said, with literacy and numeracy at the special needs end. And then it was building social skills and the soft side. I think we're missing that. And as someone mentioned earlier, it's what we've got up here that needs to be tapped in. That's the greenest energy there is on the planet. And we've all got it. We've got 7 billion people, but we're creating robots to talk to people and give them company. To me, we should use the technology, but we need to know where we're going. And it needs to suit a community. or a street or a city. But you have to pull the people together. You have to recreate community and family. We go to our rooms, we sit there on the laptop, picking up the phone, looking at this, all of us. I've got some friends staying with me this week, and all they're doing is anything. Come back when you've got less time. I hope that helped.
Thank you. I think I will take advantage of my presence as a moderator of this meeting. The reason we invited and West responded so generously to our initiative was to see to what extent the e-learning technologies can help the United Nations system organizations in the implementation of the 2030 agenda. And I think I heard a lot of things that actually correspond to the spirit of this new agenda, which is probably the most comprehensive programmatic document ever adopted at international level. What does this agenda require from us? It asks for participation, it asks for multi-stakeholderism, it asks for an integrative approach, which means that, you know, we do not have to make this anymore, these distinctions between categories, member states, private sector, academia, civil society activists, etc. We all have to contribute to the common goals. Then the e-learning platforms also, as we heard this, the first part of the debate, they also do not use that distinctions. You know, the current level of education, the technological means available, the geographical areas. So in many respects, e-learning echoes the imperative of the 2030 agenda. So I take advantage of the presence of all panelists in the room to ask them a final reflection on what would you advise the United Nations system in terms of using e-learning platform in support of the agenda. The question is addressed to all panelists, so it's not mandatory, but okay, I would invite all of them with their personal final reflections on that.
Well, if I may start, I think what the United Nations has got in front of them is a huge opportunity here of delivering a proper program of development internally that will in turn cause development around the world. The United Nations is a huge organization and it has got people placed all around the world with lots of expertise that is highly contextualized. I think if you put those people together into a training program, the benefits for the organization as a whole and then for the communities in which they operate could be enormous. I think what you need to start with is a vision. You need a strategy on making that happen, and you need to bring in the expertise from both the private sector and the public sector, and all of us working together on that.
Thank you, Manuel.
I don't mind going next. I think it's just e-learning provides so many opportunities, and it's just making sure, as I've said, it's just used in the most appropriate ways. This is a huge opportunity that can be used, that we see across a broad spectrum of areas, and I think it's I don't want to be seen as a bit of a downplaying innovation. I think it's a massive benefit. It's just understanding the context. I'll just be wary of going forward. And that's. But as I've said, I'm just playing devil's advocate. There's a huge potential here, and it's just knowing that there's two sides to the coin and making sure we have the answers for the ones that are less tech inclined.
Thank you, James. Yeah. Yes, please, John.
Yeah, again, not to be too negative myself, but what I would say is that, yeah, there is a huge amount of opportunity in terms of moving education online. What I will say is that the private sector does very much have its eye on that at the moment, and is looking to, you know, as they will, profit from what can be done in this space. I think it's really important for educational institutions and both non- and intergovernmental organisations to work together to potentially to resist that pressure to an extent. So, you know, if we can all collaborate, both in a pedagogic sense, in terms of domain knowledge, subject matter expertise, that kind of thing, but also in terms of the tools and platforms that we make use of, you know, pushing ourselves towards things like open source platforms where we possibly can. Maybe we can resist that pressure to some degree. So yeah, it's really just about entering partnership with each other and working together.
Thank you, Joanna. Andrew?
Yeah, okay. Really support what Joanna said about, not just because we call the Open University, but open source solutions, both in terms of platform and content. So Creative Commons licensing seem to be absolutely critical. There are lots of qualities to them that we need to get right, but if they're not open source and Creatively Commons licensed, you stand no chance of adaptive local solutions. And if you don't have adaptive local solutions, you don't get engagement. You know, the one thing that's very off-putting to a learner is, that's not me, doesn't look like me, not wearing the same clothes as me, not talking the same language, not of the same religion, inappropriately dressed. All of those things can completely undermine an educational activity. So I think open source content, open source systems on a mass scale, because if we're doing this, we're doing it because millions, billions of people have to be engaged in this process for it to be meaningful, and you can't do that on face-to-face. But any solution that excludes the social as well is going to probably fail. So encouraging a social dynamic around the learning and supporting that, the crowd can do an amazing thing. You know, the 5th most visited website in the world is Wikipedia. It is an educational resource of untold quality and capability, and it's made by the crowd. So there are some fantastic things to do. And one technical plea, please make sure you have an offline version. Not everybody lives in a city and has copper wire or Wi-Fi. A lot of people still rely on paper.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Andrew, please, Alan.
I'd agree with the two speakers before. Perhaps we need to choose or suggest to the UN they look across 5 continents and they actually put one project together that the universities work with and work with a particular community, and that becomes the open source. And suddenly we then get the movement. And then profit has to happen for us all to go along. It's the way the world works. But if profit or money is the key thing we're after, we'll never get there. Because your amount of the profit, instead of my amount of the profit, we become arguing and then we break up. We need to find a way that the profit for this experience at this community, that isn't the problem. It's the energy, a certain amount of cash, and watch where it goes.
Thank you very much. I think yes, please.
Hi, my name is Madison. I'm from the University of East London. I'm going into 3rd year, studying international development with NGO management. I just wanted to follow up on one of the previous points on adaptivity, and adaptability, and what the universities and what the UN can do to make some of these open learning sites more culturally appropriate and more accessible in some of these other countries where, like he says, you need to have an offline version and things along that line. What can the UN do to make it more culturally appropriate, I guess, and accessible to some of these countries.
Thank you very much. Anyone else with a question or a comment? Yes, please. The young lady there. Yeah.
Hi. Marina Sorel from UEL. I have a comment regarding the culture influence of like online education and the importance of it. I think a very important element is the political discourse that affects the culture and even the emphasis on education and how it differs from time to time and from like country to country. And I think the UN should pay attention to that. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. I think it's a valid comment. Thank you very much.
Yes. Jidda Gazama from the University of Maiduguri. Alan Dean's "Are we willing to change?" This really got to my mind so much that I must speak. We are willing to change. The case of National Open University of Nigeria has taught a lot of us that when you consistently stay on a point of value and quality, people are going to see and change their minds. There was so much opposition to Open University in Nigeria, but one person made the change. Our former president, President Olusegun Obasanjo, saw this as very, very, very important for us developing world. He not only brought somebody far away from Australia as a vice chancellor to that university, he appointed some of us that had nothing to do with the Open University, and we forced ourselves to change. And today, that single person got his bachelor's, his master's, even PhD through Open University. Today, Open University of Nigeria has changed the attitude of people towards e-learning. Not only that, many universities in that country now are trying to steal from National Open University of Nigeria. So we are willing to change. The university is willing to change, to even go to places like Pada to educate women. And when United Nations now begins to put open inputs into e-learning, Mr. Chairman, we are going to be even more open to change. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I think we've heard very, very wise words about the importance of knowledge as a global public good, as one of the panelists, the first part said. And knowledge is indeed the resource that is cultivated by education, and it is a resource that actually does not decrease while it is consumed. So I think our debate concludes on a quite positive and optimistic note. I'm glad to have found that during these debates from different perspectives, there is a lot of common understanding and common denominator on the potential of e-learning, and I will definitely will try to pass this message, not only to pass this message via our review, but also to make some concrete recommendations in order to mobilize the interest of all the United Nations organizations, in particular in relation with the laboratory of ideas and innovation that is represented by the academic community. I'd like to thank once again by applauding all the panelists for very, very interesting and informative debates that we had this afternoon.
Can we ask all other distinguished speakers to come forward? We have a small appreciation certificate to give to all the speakers. I think you have done very well.
They have changed before the...
Yes. Yes. Oh, yeah. It says appreciation for your, in recognition of your valuable presentation and constructive contribution as a panel member. I think they have done that. So they deserve a big round of applause.
Is that Herrick?
Yeah, that's great.
Thank you very much. Professor Mario? Thank you. Thank you very much.
Should have digital badges.
I wasn't expecting that.
Ooh,
Joanna Strout?
I've just downloaded your report. It's really handy, actually. It's really good to see the one, the King's strategy. Yeah, you guys was open and public. Really handy, thank you.
I think she deserves another cloud because she's the only lady in this panel.
Yes.
Yes, because you can see the slogan of the UN, I am all there. Andrew Law?
She hasn't got the longest hair.
no, that's true.
The longest hair, okay. Alan Bean? It's a pleasure. Thank you. And we have one for Will Shen because he's from GIU in 10. He has been working quite hard behind closed door, contacting all these people. So we also appreciating your help here. I believe you agree, Dimitri. He has done a lot of work here. Absolutely. And finally, not least, Dijon. Where is Dijon? I think Dijon is a researcher for the GIU on this project. So next year we will see you telling us more about this project. Finally, I think we can take all this as a group with Dimitri himself. He has. You are the moderator. So if you can. Okay.
Do one of you too.
Okay. Then let's take a group one. This video, by the way, I think is going to be quite. We will put them online and we will share it with you.
Okay.
Yeah.
It should be on a normal YouTube. So.
You want that moved?
Yeah. Careful. Very precious.
Better not to think about these things.
So please remember, if we all help and do a little bit, it will make a big difference.